Welcome to the Topic of the Month with Kim Wardlow, an AINC original podcast. It's not easy being blind or going through vision loss, but we'll help you navigate these waters. Press on. Push forward. You've got this.
Hello, thank you for joining us for our first Topic of the Month session for 2023. It's January and we have a whole new year of topics planned for you. I'm Kim Wardlow, the director of the Audio Information Network of Colorado, and we're bringing you the Topic of the Month podcast. And our topic for January is independent living. And we're hoping to bring you, it'll be five. There's five Tuesdays this year when we drop our podcast, 5 individuals that can bring information to you about different aspects of independent living from different perspectives. So different ages, different times when vision was lost, all those things. So we're hoping that this is a very informative month for you and that you'll be joining us for all 5 episodes. So this week, we are starting the month with Evan Starnes, who is our audio production technician here at AINC. So he will be joining us in just a moment.
This is Topic of the Month with Kim Wardlow. If you enjoy what you hear, please visit AIN Colorado for more shows, news, and articles read by our amazing staff and volunteers. If you have a question for Kim or would like to recommend a guest for future shows, please visit aincolorado.org/podcast-guest. Thanks for listening and enjoy.
Hi, Evan. Thank you for joining me today to talk about independent living. And Happy New Year to you. I was saying Happy New Year to everyone else. This is our first episode of Topic of the Month for this year. How are your holidays?
You know, my holidays were pretty good. They honestly were pretty relaxing. Nothing super extravagant happened. Hung out with family, ate a lot of food, and I got some cool gifts and gave some cool gifts. I'm very, very thankful. And I'm just looking forward to the new year, and it's going to be a great one. That
sounds great. Mine are much the same. I always ask people, we're in the month of January. Is there something that you particularly like or appreciate about January?
Well, let's see. January, my mom and grandma's birthday is in January. And the cool part is my mom was born on my grandma's birthday, so they celebrate the same birthday. So that happens, and that's going to happen here. Yeah, it's going to happen in a few days. And normally I'd say other than that, January is kind of an uneventful month, but there's also this freshness with it. It's kind of the whole new year, new everybody. I don't know. I don't believe in the new year, new me kind of thing, but there is this whole aspect of just a fresh new year and kind of a clean slate.
Yeah, I agree. Everything you've kind of gotten through the holidays and now everything kind of starts up again. And it does
feels different.
It feels a little bit different. It seems like a little bit of a fresh start. So I always like that about January myself. So just for folks that don't know you, besides being here at AINC, you are also in college. And so what I was thinking in terms of talking to people about independent living, I thought you would be a great person to give that perspective of someone who's younger and kind of starting out, getting into college, getting into the workforce, and kind of making that transition, from just regular high school and, regular school and training to being a little bit more independent. What helps you with that? I know you have had vision loss your entire life. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. So I think it might be great information for other individuals around your age who are looking at going to college or starting their first job, or a person who's older but has recently lost vision and is now kind of like, okay, how do I do things? How do I get back into work? Just to talk a little bit about your experience in those two areas. And of course, I mean, you're our tech guy, so I know technology is a big part of how you achieve your independence. So do you want to start with your college experience?
Yeah, sure. So I attended an independence trading program, and right after that, I went straight into college. And I went in there really, honestly, not knowing quite what to expect. I signed up for my classes, I registered first to my community college, and applied, got accepted. On one day, I just went into the campus and I didn't even know what I was going to do, but I went straight into the disability services office and I was just like, hey, I'm a new student here. I don't really know what I'm doing, but can you help me out? And yeah, I got set up for an intake meeting, which any college student, if you're working, I don't think it is particular to community colleges, any college, if you're working with the disability support services, you're going to need to do an intake because they need to know what accommodations you need. At the time, I thought I was going to go into computers, like computer information systems or some form of IT because technology. And so I signed up for that and that was the degree I chose and I decided to just take it easy and I took 2 classes, one in person and one online, just to see what it was like. And I will admit, I'm not proud to admit this, but this is okay. I did it very last minute, as in a couple of weeks before the start of class. I kind of just went into my first in-person class, which was a music appreciation class. And I pretty much just went through my class as if, we're everybody else because I was everybody else. Mm-hmm. And afterwards, I talked to my instructor and I was like, hey, these are my accommodations. I am blind. I would appreciate it if anything visual were described to me. And if there was a project that was visual, if you could find some workaround and, just kind of explained it. And that's the other thing is when you get accommodations from disability support services, it is up to you to enforce them. They're not going to handhold you and they're not going to, they'll help you, but they're not going to, go talk to your teachers. It's your responsibility to do it however way you feel comfortable.
Do they support you if you would have an instructor that wasn't really meeting your needs or wasn't being supportive of you? Could you go back to the office and get help?
You absolutely could. And at least with Front Range, when you renew your disability accommodations each semester, which you have to do at Front Range, I think you have to do it at pretty much any college. You have to check off these boxes that say, like, I understand that if my instructor is not adhering to my accommodations, I will reach out to disability support services immediately because they will help you and they will advocate for you if said instructor is not making the class materials as accessible as they could be and making it so that you can access them just like everybody else.
But it's your responsibility to take that initiative and ask for that assistance.
Yes, it definitely is. But once you do that, they will help you out, and they will be very good. They should be very good advocates. Mm-hmm. So that semester, music appreciation was that class. Went off without a hitch. It was actually a really fun class. Online is another kind of story here. Some teachers use different online platforms for their e-textbooks or quiz platforms that aren't like standard. In Colorado, the pretty much, I don't know if this is a local thing, but any community college uses the Desire to Learn system, which is accessible. And so normally, most aspects of an online class are very easy to participate in, as in, online discussions and quizzes, assuming that they're on D2L, will be accessible. However, you will run into problems. For instance, I tried to take a music theory course a semester later that was online, and it turns out that the textbook that the instructor was using claimed to be accessible, but all of the graphical content that correlates with music theory was not accessible at all, and it prevented me from being able to get a good grade on the assignments that were in the textbook. And they were in the textbook, as in you did the assignment and the instructor could see that you did it. D2L had nothing to do with it. So that's kind of a thing you really need to be careful of, is when you sign up for an online class, be aware of what platform your instructor is using, and if it's accessible or not. And if it's not, you might have to switch to either an in-person class or a different online class with a different instructor, essentially. But I did take one online class my first semester, and that also went well because it was all of the material was accessible.
So in your music theory class, there were just visuals that in the online textbook, they weren't described.
They weren't described, and it was also being done on a computer with only text-to-speech, no Braille.
Oh.
And music Braille is a whole nother can of worms I don't really want to get into, but I'll speak in terminology here. The staff, for instance, was not even, it just said image. And any screen reader user out there will know and probably has cringed at hearing me say image, because anybody that, that's just not something you want to hear.
So that's something that folks should look out for or be aware of if they're looking at online classes, and just try to check that out as much as possible beforehand, just to prevent getting into a class and having things not be accessible.
Yes. And my strategy has been, even though I get I can get the accommodations letters sent out, I also just email the instructor of the class I'm taking and say, hey, I am a blind student taking your class. I want to know exactly what you're using and what it entails. And I want to make sure that it is accessible so that I can take the class equally, essentially.
And so in the situation where you had the textbook that was inaccessible, was that resolved at all? Were you able to get anything that was accessible to help you? It sounded like maybe not, if that affected your grade.
Unfortunately, I wasn't. And I reached out to my instructor regarding the issue of not being able to take this class. And unfortunately, she was one of those instructors that was not on campus at all, as in I would not get to see her in person. And she was only online. And the problem was, she was like, yes, this textbook is supposed to be accessible. Here's a link. And I clicked the link, and it was just a section of just a little page of text saying, our material from this publisher is 100% accessible, which is obviously false. And that was about as far as I could get. And the annoying part was, I was falling further and further behind in this class because I kept trying to take these assignments, and I kept failing to take I kept failing, and that was discouraging to me. And I ended up dropping the class. And that was the first music theory class I had to drop because there was a point where I became so far behind that I would have had to play catch up for days, and I still would have been a little bit off course. And that's kind of a scary thought. So yeah, I ended up having to drop the class. It's okay. College students, if you ever have to drop a class, nobody's going to be mad at you. It's your career. Do it if you must. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
Some people feel shame.
And that, right. And there was nothing you could do about the book being inaccessible, no matter what it said it was. And I think, that's just evidence of, we're continually trying to educate folks and make people aware that just because something says it's accessible, and maybe the publisher really thought it was accessible, but if it isn't, it isn't. And and they need to honor somebody who needs that accommodation to be able to say, oh no, this actually isn't accessible. So yeah, I think that just points out that there can be, even with all the supports and this, the disabled services office and everything, that there can still be some challenges to face and the need to advocate for yourself.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is the case.
Well, I know that you've continued on, and Alex and I went to one of your concerts where you played a piano solo. So despite some of the challenges, I know you are doing really well, and we really enjoyed that.
That was my second semester, and that was actually a very encouraging semester because I had I was going to try and give myself a challenge and see how much I could really handle. And then I took an English course, and I had the most amazing English instructor. He was an incredibly inspirational man, and he was just he went out of his way to make sure everything was accessible, and I was super appreciative. And I took a psychology course with a very disorganized instructor, and let me just say, if you're taking a course and your instructor is not organized, it makes it like 3 times more difficult. This last semester, I will say, even though I was taking 2 classes, it was extraordinarily difficult. And let me just say, if you're feeling down, and if if a particular semester feels difficult, even if you're only taking a couple classes, that's fine. It might be other factors going into it, or it might just be that, you're not having a great semester, and not every semester is going to be an amazing, bright, and happy one. Right.
And I was going to say, and something like that, having difficulty because of a disorganized professor, the students with sight probably felt the same way. So, it's not always it's not always you. It's not always the disability. Sometimes it's other factors, and all the students are probably experiencing that same thing.
Yes, definitely. But the semester before, when I did take the piano, I took a private instruction class with it was just me and this piano instructor. And it's pretty cool because I, picked a song, and I'd been playing piano before. Like, I would noodle occasionally, and I very much enjoyed the piano, but I never really tried to actually practice a song with the proper fingering. And yeah, it was cool because she said, pick a song. I picked Bach's Prelude in C. That's a really good song. And I practiced that all semester. I still managed to pull through, and I actually had a really good performance, and I have no complaints. It was fun, and I don't know if I was her first blind student or not, but she was able to, I think because it's a private course, she was able to make it was easier for her to make stuff more accessible.
Right.
And sometimes private instruction might just be the next best option. For instance, if you're taking a class if you're taking something in a classroom setting and it's just not working, for instance, music theory, you might want to try and sign up for a private instruction, like a student directed course, as in you get to figure out what you want to learn about, but you'll still get the credit. That's another alternative to explore too. But yeah, that semester was also, it was an interesting one, full of ups and downs, and that's pretty much how any semester is going to be. And that might also be another factor. If you're taking a class and you have a brand new instructor, it's just as hard for them because they're trying to figure out not only how to make their material accessible, but they're also trying to figure out how to teach a class that they haven't taught before. So keep that in mind. This semester I took a second swing at music theory, and it was an in-person class, and I still had to drop it because the textbook was another one of those that just the graphics were not described. And even if they were, there was a lot more content in that class that was just very visual. And the only way I would have been able to do it would have been to have somebody sit by me and go through everything. Yeah, and it might have given me an unfair advantage, which sometimes, honestly, if you're just trying to get a class taken care of and you need to get that credit and you're really not worried about it, that might be okay. I don't personally condone that, but it still wasn't accessible. And so I had to drop that class for the second time. And rather than this semester trying to take a third attempt at music theory, I ended up going to not disability support services. However, be prepared, because if you are having difficulties in a class, any difficulties, there are some instructors that will just gravitate towards disability services because that's all they know. And just be prepared to kind of have to advocate for yourself and say, no, this is not a disability related issue. This is a class related issue. I'm having trouble. In this case, it was a disability related issue, but disability support services wasn't able to really do too much because it was the content of the course. Right. So what I ended up having to do was go to academic advising and talk with them about the fact that I'm trying to get these 2 music theory classes out of the way, because you have to take 2 of them for the degree. I switched my degree to recording arts, and switching degrees, while especially on your first year, your first year of college or your first attempt, is like so normal, and it is actually it's a great idea if you feel like you're taking a degree and you're not fulfilled and it's not correlating to what you actually want to do in life. Switch. You're doing more harm to yourself than anything if you're just sticking with that degree. So I switched to recording arts. Little did I know that it would have 2 music theory courses. And I went to advising, and that was another hurdle I had to get over. I previously had just not a very good academic advisor. She kind of just wanted to get me through. I did a virtual meeting with her, and she was just like, yeah, you should take these classes. Let me plan them. And she wouldn't really answer my questions very well, and she was just kind of a little snarky. And if any student were to run into that issue, there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I don't feel comfortable with this advisor. Can you give me a switch? And fortunately for me, she was leaving and going to find other opportunities. So we switched, and I got a really amazing advisor. And academic advising can be hit or miss. And fortunately, it was a hit for me. I explained that the music theory content was not accessible, and that I've tried 2 times, both online and in person. And so we reached out to the instructors, and they really didn't have much to say. They're like, yeah, my class is visual. I don't know what to do. So now it's gotten to the point where all of the music theory instructors from all 3 Front Range campuses have now been putting their heads together to try to make this accessible. And sometimes that just might have to be the case. And honestly, I don't entirely know what's going to happen with that. If I'm going to be able to take the classes, or if we're going to have to find some alternative.
And maybe what's important is that you didn't get discouraged and advocated for yourself. And also, while you're doing all of this, you've also started a job and started working. And obviously, recording arts connects very much to what you do here for us at AINC, working with the recordings. And maybe we could switch gears and talk a little bit about what you do in work. And I know getting into the workforce, it's not just the job. So there's what you're doing here, and there's technologies here, but it's, getting to work and, all of those things, once you're in the workforce as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you do here at AINC and what, accommodations you requested and that that you need here at your work?
Yeah, sure. I started at AINC well over a year ago as an intern, and honestly, accommodations were pretty easy, and I was able to just kind of take care of everything by myself. But it was basically something as simple as, my normal desktop computer, putting a screen reader on that desktop computer, and in this case it was NVDA, which is free, but it was just a matter of getting that screen reader installed, getting it configured, and then it was pretty much just smooth sailing. I was already familiar with the software I was using, Audacity in this case, and it was just a matter of learning the various software that we use, in like the volunteer portal, for instance. That's something that normally it's a very niche software, and it has had its issues with accessibility in the past, and we figured out some workarounds. Mainly, sometimes I've had to have my boss come up and look at the computer with me, and we've had to look at a particular program and see about a way to make it accessible. And if not, I have had her just if anything, part of that program is inaccessible, she'll use that part of the program, but everything else I can do if it's accessible, if that makes sense. So yeah, apart from the screen reader installation, I didn't really need to buy anything special or set up anything that would warrant modification of existing technology, essentially.
So you have support in your work or in your workplace, but have you had any challenges just getting to and from work, or scheduling, or those types of things where you're wanting to be independent and to be working, but are there challenges in terms of transportation and those types of things?
Yes, and that is a soapbox that I am more than happy to jump on for a few minutes. Transportation, especially on with an in-person job, is something that really needs to be considered, because it can be a challenge. In this case, I live about a half hour to 35-minute drive from the office, and besides the fact that transit here isn't exactly safe and reliable, there's also no direct route from my place to AINC. You would have to take 3 different buses, and it would take about 2.5 hours to just there, and then 2.5 hours back. And so that's a 5-hour commute, which is really not logical. And I guess the only advantage of that is that it would technically be cheaper, but sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and just find an alternative. So for a while, I relied solely on the Uber and Lyft platforms, and it was coming out of my pocket, which is fine. It was kind of expensive though, and it did take a decent chunk out of my earnings, but not as much as owning a car. So think about that, because people who own a car have to pay for, insurance and all that, and that costs hundreds of dollars. This was about half that. So it still was cheaper than if I were a sighted person with a car, but it was still expensive. And then there was the factor of timing, and you really, unfortunately, have to plan things out a little bit more in advance than other people, sadly, because of how reliable or unreliable these platforms might be. For instance, one day, you might go request an Uber to work, and you'll get a ride in 5 minutes, and they will be a top-notch, phenomenal driver. They'll take you to they'll drop you off right at the front door, right where you need to be, and you'll be solid, and it'll be smooth, and you'll have a great day.
Have you found other options besides Uber and Lyft and the public transit?
I've looked. There is some it's technically called paratransit. I can't stand it, but there is a service here called Access-a-Ride, and that is actually another segue. But Access-a-Ride does offer these vehicles they will take you from your home to your destination, and they will make sure that you get there safely and that you get to where you want to go. For instance, the front door of your office. Unfortunately, their quality of service is kind of diminished, and honestly, their timing has not been consistent, and you have to plan your trip a day in advance, which is really not super logical because last minute things happen. That is so normal. If this year's taught me anything, it's that last minute is okay, and that's fine. But
it might work for somebody in a work situation where they're going to work at the same time every day.
Of course it would. And yeah, it'd be kind of cheaper than Uber. You have to pay for tickets, which are like a couple bucks a ticket, and you just show your driver the ticket and you're on your way. The annoying thing with Access-a-Ride being late and not consistent is that you're kind of going to need to plan things. You're going to need a plan to arrive earlier than you normally would. For instance, if I were to start my shift at 9:30 and I wanted to get to the office at 9, I would tell Access-a-Ride that I wanted to get to the office at 8:45 just to leave a 15-minute time window in case the driver happened to be late.
Right.
And do that with Uber too. If you need to get to a certain location especially at a very specific time, I'd advise if you have a half-hour trip, check an hour before you have to get to where you need to go, or more.
So it sounds like both with your college experience and your work experience, that there's a lot of planning involved and thinking through things ahead of time. In terms of, as you're doing both these aspects of your life, are there technologies that really help you, or if there's some tips or something you could share with folks that might help them if they're, either technology-wise, if they're either starting into college or starting their career, that you found helpful?
Okay. So technology-wise, let's start here with just getting things done in day-to-day, as in checking emails and getting around and reading print and identifying currency. Maybe this might be surprising to some people. The easiest solution is just a basic smartphone. Honestly, I used to say you should just get an iPhone because they work and they're accessible out of the box. However, Androids have come a long way, and both platforms will give you the same, or not really the same, but relatively similar levels of productivity. The reason I like the iPhone, though, is that it works out of the box, and now in the new update, and on the 12 Pro and any Pro model iPhones up from the 12 Pro, you have features like door detection, people detection. You can basically walk around with your phone out, and it will sort of be your eyes. And on the topic of being eyes, there is an app called Be My Eyes, and if you need any visual help, it's a volunteer-driven app. So it's kind of like a very glorified video call or FaceTime call. And, if you need somebody to read instructions to you on a box or a sign, or even if you need help, you're trying to apply for jobs and you need a picture or something, they can help you with it.
So, Evan, thank you for sharing some of the things that you use technology-wise, and also your experience as you've entered college and as you've entered the workforce, and hopefully others will find that helpful to them. What is next for you? What are you looking forward to as we start the new year?
I'm honestly looking forward to, going back to working more hours at my job. And to me, experience is pretty important, so I'll be getting more experience. But I will also be taking classes on the side. I'm taking an evening class, so I'm looking forward to how that's going to work. I'm also looking forward to just a good semester. I want to finish this semester stronger than I did last semester. And just, looking forward to getting everything back in order.
Well, thanks again for joining us, and obviously wish you all the best in your classes as they start up again. Next week, we will be looking at another aspect of independent living, just areas in your personal space, your personal care, in your home, how you can organize things. So looking at that, to help you live independently by having your personal space organized so things are easy for you. So just looking at that next week. And thanks again for joining us. As always, please tune in to Aftersight and Blindsight, our other two podcasts. Aftersight has some amazing guests coming up and looking at their lives with vision loss and after they've lost vision. And then Blindsight is looking at various aspects of mental health, but it also from the lens of a person with vision loss. So we always invite you to listen to those as well. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. And if you can give us a rating on whatever platform or a comment on whatever platform you're using, that's always very helpful to us as well. So thanks again for tuning in to our topic of the month from the Audio Information Network of Colorado.